Matters with Paul Rosen.
Our diets, our Western diets in America are just really, you just don't realize how poor they really are.
What would you say to others who would like to feel better?
Sometimes you need to find the instruction. That's where the testing and everything comes in, because without that knowledge, there's no way I could have got to the point where I'm at today.
Straight talk about health.
And then I start preaching and telling them what I've been doing. And this guy named Paul Rosen has changed my life.
With your host, Paul Rosen.
By the way, the information contained in this program is not approved by the FDA, nor intended to treat, diagnose, or claim to cure any medical condition or disease as defined by Western medicine. However, skilled practitioners of many disciplines have found nutrition response testing to be a highly reliable supportive technology for assessing the health and fitness of the body's functional system.
Here's a pretty serious side effect, Paul. Death. If you're having death as a side effect, it's time to change up. And we'll tell you what particular thing may result in that serious side effect this morning on Health Matters. How are you feeling, Paul?
I'm feeling good.
Me too. There are just numerous side effects that can result from prescription drugs. And in the worst cases...
That's what you're getting
in the worst cases... Thank you for the dramatic stinger.
That was
James.
great.
That worked really well. In the worst cases, it can result in death. So that was my dramatic headline. That was my hook right there. But
oh, my gosh.
In most cases, I'm hoping that's not what's going on.
Yeah, I think we want to be a little bit more constructive than that. Although it is true. It is true. What I wanted to do, today was just kind of walk through 3 commonly used medications, and it's very interesting to me that, like, people will come in, they'll be feeling lousy, they've got a list of symptoms that are driving them nuts, and they're taking multiple medications, and what doesn't really register most of the time is that most of the symptoms that they're suffering from are actually side effects from the medications that they're taking. Most people don't even know the potential side effects from medications that they're taking. And they certainly don't know that you can't replace food with poison.
And they don't know if they're dead, if they go to that
Let's
extreme.
not keep going to that. We're not going there.
But let me make sure here, Paul. So somebody goes and gets prescription medications for whatever is vexing them, what particular illness is bothering them. Then suddenly they have other symptoms, which they're probably going to assume are additional symptoms from their first illness. But in reality, they're taking on these extra problems because of side effects from the medication.
Indeed. And the other thing, too, is that I have many patients who come in, and when they list their what's bothering them, they don't even bother to list the conditions that they're taking medications for, because of course they think they're handled. Oh, I'm having joint pain and muscle cramps and lightheadedness, and that's what I want to deal with. But I'm not telling you that I actually have high blood pressure. I have to sort of sort through the intake forms and find out that they're taking a drug, for example, like lisinopril, which is a blood pressure medication. And when you look up lisinopril to find out what potential side effects you might incur, numero uno is dizziness. All right? So the patient is saying, "Hey, I'm dizzy," and numero uno on top is dizziness.
So I would think people are aware of these possible side effects. It's in the commercials, maybe right there on the label. But in your experience, Paul, when they come to you, do they just forget all that?
They're not aware. They're not aware of the side effects. They may have been exposed to it, but it's not part of their, surface consciousness.
So why is that? Why aren't they more aware of the information?
God, your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah. But as a practitioner, I would think maybe that's something you deal with. You deal with the fact that, look, this medication, which you probably shouldn't be taking in the first place, tells you outright that dizziness, for example, may be a side effect.
Well, people generally don't know that high blood pressure is something that you can take care of, generally speaking, without medications. Of course, you have to make significant lifestyle changes to do it. and many people are resistant to that.
I think many of us would assume it's a package. We have to make lifestyle changes, maybe dietary changes, but also the medication would be a big important part of getting that blood pressure down. That's the assumption, and maybe what you're getting to is that's a wrong assumption.
So here are some other common symptoms. So any of you folks who are taking blood pressure lowering drugs, regardless of which one it is, you're going to find that many of the symptoms I'm now going to outline will be associated with that blood pressure medication that you're taking. Such things as I mentioned, lightheadedness and dizziness, blurry vision, cloudy urine, confusion, brain fog, decrease in urine output, sweating, unusual tiredness or weakness. Fatigue and weakness are two of the top conditions that patients come to see me for, right? Those people who are taking blood pressure medications are experiencing often tiredness and weakness. Some less common side effects: abdominal and stomach pain, so digestive disturbances, body aches or pain, chest pain, of the feelings that you've got a common cold, a chronic cough, diarrhea, difficulty breathing, ear problems, headache.
You know, I think I'd rather have high blood pressure than this stuff.
Nasal congestion, nausea, runny nose, sore throat, and vomiting.
And, of course, because of all this, it's going to affect, I would think, your mental health. You're going to be more irritable, probably, and just not experiencing life in a positive way in general.
Rapid or irregular heart rhythms. Just general feeling of overall just not feeling well.
You know, I think we can just say capital M misery for the side effects and leave it at that at this point. So,
but what I'm saying is if I go through all of those symptoms, right, many of them are what people are experiencing when they come in to see me. And being on just the blood pressure medications alone, right, having me basically link them to the possibility that they're doing it to themselves again, right, is an eye-opener. It's an eye-opener.
Were you focusing on blood pressure, too, because that's one of the most common medications
yes.
which causes these kinds of side effects?
Yes.
But I would think there are many other conditions and many other medications which cause serious side effects.
Well, we're going to go through some.
All right.
But I'm focusing right now on this one because it's a big one. And but what people don't know is that there is a way to address it without the medications, without the poison. And we're going to hear from someone, one of my patients who experienced that shortly. But it's important to understand that there are alternatives, safer alternatives, just not aware of them. And that's one of the reasons I do this show, is for people to understand that there are definitely ways in which they can address a symptom like high blood pressure without using medications or poisons. So what are those ways? First and foremost, as those of you who have been listening for a while, and for those of you who are just tuning in, nutrition response testing provides a technology that allows us to identify with a high degree of certainty both, number one, what your nutritional deficiencies are. Because guaranteed, if you need blood pressure drug, you have nutritional deficiencies. Period. Definite. End of story.
Really? Just the fact that you have that need is an indicator that your nutrition is not what it should be.
Any symptom that comes and goes or comes and stays is a de facto identification of the fact that you've got nutritional deficiencies ongoing, and as a result of those deficiencies, your organs or glands, depending on which, or both, are suffering from it, so you have symptoms.
I'm guessing there is a laundry list of things which can cause high blood pressure. Is it genetic to some extent even, or in some cases is that, all there is to it?
Everything's genetic. There isn't anything that a human being experiences on the planet that doesn't relate in some fashion to genetics. We call that a red herring, right? A red herring is something that, in a school of herring with zillions of them, one of them has a red line on it. Nevertheless, it's a herring, right? That's the only thing that differentiates it. So, no, genetics are not the end-all, be-all. There might be a very, very, very infinitesimal percentage of people who, regardless of what they do, are going to have high blood pressure because of their genetics, but everybody else brought it on themselves. That's the bottom line.
Well, that's interesting because I think many of us just assume if we have certain health problems, it's because of our DNA. And I think that goes back, too, to not wanting to take personal responsibility. Who wants to think that your own personal habits, in particular, are causing you to have serious health issues?
The next category of impingement are the environmental factors. Now that we are firmly established in a toxic world, something that didn't exist 100 years ago, now that our air and water and soil are polluted to a degree beyond most people's imagination, we have to deal with things like accumulation of heavy metals and chemicals, and also living in concentrated areas, traveling around the world, bringing more microbes into places that they, generally don't thrive in, or change locations. People experience more challenge from immune factors, viruses, and then, of course, their diets tend to be poor, so they disrupt their own microbiome. We've discussed that in the past. The microbiome are the microbial family that live in everyone's gut that are there to maintain health and a strong immune system. But by eating lots of grains and fruits and sugars and other processed foods, we tend to destroy that, leaving us completely exposed to more immune factors. Food sensitivities brought on by multiple things, not the least of which is the consumption of foods with pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, and synthetic fertilizers that basically the body begins to accumulate and then recognizes as invaders. That destroys our digestive system. And then genetically modified foods, foods that contain stuff in them, genes in them, that the body simply doesn't recognize at all.
Certain environmental factors like chemicals and building materials and things like that, we don't have that much control over. I mean, you can assert control. What we can assert control over definitely is our food.
And then another factor, environmental factor now, that's become very prevalent, are the disruptions caused to some people by electromagnetic frequencies generated by personal electronic devices.
And that's our world. Those things aren't going back into the box anytime soon. So we have to find ways to deal with this, right?
That was brought very, very much to the fore for me when I had an airline pilot who was experiencing chronic dry cough, who sought all kinds of conservative medical help to no avail.
Was having no luck with anything he tried up to that point, so he came to you.
Came to see Mr. Quack, and what I discovered using...
He went to see a duck?
That's right. Quack,
no,
quack.
Okay, all right.
And ended up being referred to me by that duck.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, using the nutrition response testing technology, we narrowed it down to the influence of a really high-zoot battery-driven watch.
Oh, you're kidding. That was it?
That he wore on his left wrist. And I had him take that watch off. Within 24 to 48 hours, the cough stopped. And it stopped for consecutive days until he absolutely wouldn't believe it. And he put it back on. And the cough started up again.
He wasn't listening to his own staff, who always tell him once the flight begins to remove electronic devices.
No, that's not what the staff says.
Okay.
The staff says turn off electronic devices.
My mistake.
Yeah.
In his case, he had to take it off, though. He had to remove that watch. But
you obviously haven't flown for a while.
How would you know that? I mean, how else would you diagnose something like that? Because who would think it? Who would think that your watch is causing you serious health issues?
Well, you would need to have some technology that was able to identify disruptions in the autonomic nervous system. That's what you would need. It's not that uncommon.
Well, that's bad, because we're all walking around, in some cases, with these cookie sheet size phones pressed to our heads, often all day long.
Or in our breast pockets.
There we go, like I have mine right here. Brand new iPhone, by the way, I must say.
Hey!
I got this week.
Woo-hoo!
Hey, finally made the leap, and I must say, so far, I'm impressed with all the capabilities. And I'm not so impressed with the battery life. It seems to run out pretty quick, so I might have to address that with my friendly dealer. However, if I develop serious health issues from using this thing, that's something I'll have to address on my own time, right?
Indeed. You have to stop watching those skin flicks all day long.
Well, there's that. I mean, you have to make some sacrifices. So I've got this right here. And you'll notice, too, I've got a MacBook open right in front of me. And the studio we're in right now, Paul, is full of monitors and all kinds of equipment.
Yeah.
So point being, most of us in a contemporary work environment are exposed to all kinds of electronics. In almost any office, every office today, you're going to have monitors everywhere and people using computers.
Not everyone. Not everybody's autonomic nervous system is disrupted to the extent that it will create, a health issue or a symptom, something that comes up. But when it does, right, it's a problem. And now we know, right? It's something that we didn't even know that was possible.
That's true, but my point is that it's probably impossible in many ways to completely limit our exposure to electronic devices. So can we compensate in other ways in terms of leading healthier lifestyles?
Can learn to deal with it, and there are ways to deal with it, and that's what we share with our patients.
All right, so there are all kinds of ways to make sure your environment is safer and healthier without sacrificing the tools you need to conduct your business and your daily life.
Well, in some cases, you do have to sacrifice the tool, or you have to. I mean, I just recommended to, this pilot that he use a mechanical watch.
Well, there you go. And maybe I misphrased that. I should say not sacrifice so much, just change up. You know, go from device A to device B.
Yes. And just think of the. I mean, he was to the point where he would have had to have given up his profession, because you can't be hacking and coughing, while you're up in the plane trying to figure out what's going on.
Was this an older guy, by the way?
No,
maybe,
it was not.
30s, 40s, something like that?
Well, is that older?
Well,
I mean, compared to what? No, I mean, that's, compared to 20, yeah.
But when you
30s
said,
and 40s, I mean, I was in his 40s. Mm-hmm. That's a fairly young guy as far as I'm concerned.
Well, certainly, he's right in the middle of his career. So if he was looking at something that was, going to make him have to change careers, that's a serious issue.
And chronic dry cough is something that many, many people experience. It's also a side effect from a blood pressure drug, chronic dry cough. So, point being that you've got to take personal responsibility. You've got to find out what your unique impingements are, or obstructions, or interference with your body's capability of maintaining itself. And because we now live in such a toxic world, those are the things that are missed almost always. People do not have a way to actually identify how the chemicals are affecting their body, how the accumulated metals are affecting their body, how the food sensitivities are affecting their body, etc. That's where the nutrition response testing comes in.
I think kids, too, are probably most vulnerable, are they not, to environmental factors and also to things in their diets that could cause these kinds of issues.
More and more. It's amazing how many children experience asthma and constant illnesses and failure to thrive and, oh my gosh, so many different things, all of which are relatively simple to address, but they require utilizing tools, evaluation tools that are not usual. They require making lifestyle changes that are absolutely critical.
You had a patient, Paul, who in fact dealt in particular with medications.
Yeah, Patty was experiencing, she had diabetes, and she also was dealing with insomnia and pain and leg cramps and high blood pressure and high cholesterol and weight loss and acid reflux and swelling legs and feet. I mean, the list just went on and on. And let's hear the beginning of her story. How did you hear about nutrition response testing in the first place?
Well, I've been hearing a lot of things and reading a lot of books throughout the years, and I happened to turn on your radio program one Sunday morning, and you were talking with a patient, and a lot of things he described were things that I was feeling. We were both about the same age, and I've tried many, many different things and decided, why not go ahead and call your toll-free number and go listen to one of your talks and see what it's all about.
So you said you tried many different things. What?
Weight Watchers, and then years ago Nutrisystem, but I gained it all back. I never really tried diet pills. I've tried some exercising, and just things weren't working. And I go in and think, well, this food's good or that food's good, and then that wasn't working, and then I would just quit, give up, and then thought, what am I going to do? I just happened to listen to your program one Sunday morning. It sounds
like, so many stories out there, exactly the same. Now, so what you're describing is your major focus was weight loss.
Right, initially.
Yeah, initially. And yet, you're a diabetic.
Yeah, and I never even took that into account with the high blood pressure, too, that was part of the problem. It's like, well, maybe something different's got to work for me.
Isn't that wild? I mean, I tell you, I have that happen so often where people sort of have a focus. I want to get rid of the skin rash, or my hair is falling out, and I want to stop that, or I'd like to lose weight, and I'm not losing weight, and yet the foundation of the health of your body is crumbling dramatically.
Yeah, that's what I was feeling like too.
And you had other symptoms as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I had high blood pressure and with the diabetes as well, and I just wasn't sleeping well. I've got sleep apnea. Acid reflux was bothering me a lot at night. Leg cramps were really kind of getting me. 2 or 3 times I get up in the middle of the night with bad leg cramps, and I figured I've got to do something to try to figure out what's going on. And every time I go in the doctor's office, well, here, take this pill or take that pill. Well, that's not working.
Yeah,
long term.
And you had like leg and feet swelling as well.
Oh yeah. That was big time.
Yeah, that was big time. And of course you had body pain.
Right. Lower back, my neck.
Right.
Shoulders.
Right. So here's this whole laundry list of ailments or symptoms anyway.
Yeah.
And the thing on your mind is weight loss. How common do you think that is out there?
Very, very common, because I hear all my coworkers talk about all the time, I've got to lose weight to take care of it, and yet they were still kind of in the same boat as me.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's like looking like you're in a boat with a a giant hole in the hull, taking on water like nobody's business, but you notice that the boat needs a paint job.
Yes, exactly. And then my doctor said, well, take this diet pill, and then my blood pressure will start to go up. I said, well, that's not working.
Meanwhile, you're being plied with all different kinds of drugs.
Right,
drugs,
exactly.
like what sort of drugs? Drugs for what?
My high blood pressure, was taking Benazepril, and then with I was on 4 different types of diabetes medication, and with your help, I've dropped one of them, but Actos and Metformin and Byetta, that's taken by injection, and another HCT along with the high blood pressure medication, because my legs were swelling up, but then it seemed like the problem got worse. So it's like I was taking a double dose of that.
Right. So anyway, medication upon medication upon medication. And symptoms are basically with the medication only, you're improving dramatically?
Oh, yeah. Definitely. I don't have my leg cramps.
No, with the drugs. We're not talking about on the program yet.
So with the drugs, you're improving dramatically? Of course, the answer to that question is no.
No,
you're not. You're managing your symptoms with the drug.
Exactly.
Yeah. But basically, you're going nowhere.
Exactly.
You're going nowhere. And if you look at the side effects of the drugs that you were taking, did you ever go back and take a look and see what the side effects are of some of these medications?
Yeah, in fact, one of my endocrinologist of my diabetes doctor wanted to get me on cholesterol medication, even though my cholesterol was pretty good. I started taking it, and all of a sudden I noticed I had horrid cramps in my legs and my arms, and I looked at the side effects on this and started looking at, potential liver damage, long term. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't take that anymore.
So as you can hear, Patty's side effects were very severe. She was also taking one medication, at least one by injection, which sounds awful to me.
Probably her insulin. But this is the reason I picked Patty's testimonial or her interview is because you would think this is uncommon, but this is common. I mean, this scenario, her experience is common. Medication after medication after medication after medication. And remember the side effects of just the blood pressure drug that I related? Right? Insomnia was there. Body pain and cramps were there. Digestive disturbance like acid reflux were there. Leg swelling was there. Fluid handling is there. I mean, it's just and people just like Patty, who admitted it outright, it was eye-opening to go back through those and realize that they were experiencing those symptoms which aligned almost perfectly with the side effects of the medications. So you have to ask yourself then, is it worth the risk? Well, I'm going to give you some combinations of things you can start doing generally with respect to lowering blood pressure and lowering cholesterol. But I have to add to this that not everybody will get results by utilizing these things unless you know all of the environmental stresses, impingements on your autonomic nervous system. And that only comes, folks, there's no shortcut. It only comes from knowing your uniquenesses. And the only way to do that is to evaluate. Yes, you got to spend a few bucks to, hook up with me or someone like me who utilizes nutrition response testing and find out what your unique nutritional deficiencies and barriers to healing are. But having said that, some of the food items that you can use to help begin the process of handling high cholesterol or high blood pressure are barley water. Remember, any of these food things, any of this is taken from organic sources, known organic sources. So you've got to make sure to do that.
One more note, you can get a free chapter of Paul Rosen's book, The Missing Piece. Just go to his website, acunatural.com, acunatural.com, and fill out the dialog box that pops up. Rest assured, no information you provide will ever be shared with anyone else. So, what are you waiting for? Get going on your personal road to wellness today.